Okay. Okay. Thank you very much, Marianne. Um, you covered a lot of ground there, and especially the promotion for Milcopex, which is the prime purpose for this series of talks. This is now the second of our series of bi-monthly or twice monthly talks. And we're very fortunate this time to have Adel Bulpitt from Pretoria to talk to us. She's made a huge personal sacrifice to talk to us at 3 o'clock in the morning, her time. Adele is very active and has been very active both pre and during COVID and subsequently with Zoom meetings. And she supports a very extensive worldwide Zoom program, embracing visitors from the US, the UK, Australia, and Canada. She also has worked very closely with a very, very old friend of mine, originally from South Africa, Jamie Smith, in the UK. And she's done an amazing job of digitalizing all his British Commonwealth and foreign collections. And these, if you go into Facebook or Google, you'll find copies of these Zoom presentations that Adele has put together. She's much, much better at technology and all of those modern aids than I am. And she's going to talk to us this evening about her perspectives on modern postal history. And she's going to touch on how a lot of the modern technology can actually help us. She is or was past president of the Pretoria Philatelic Society. She's also a member of a number of other philatelic societies in and around the Johannesburg area. And at one time, she was also the editor for the South African Philatelist magazine, the publication of the Philatelic Federation of South Africa. So, Adele, the floor is yours, and I know you're going to run your own presentation. And I'm glad that you're going to be available at the end of the presentation for questions and discussion.
Yes, I am. Thank you, Colin. Guys, thank you for this opportunity. Just to let you know that my presentation is pre-recorded because I'm quite a nervous speaker. So just bear with me. I'll press the buttons and we'll get going. Good evening all and welcome to Milcopex 2026. As a novice in my philatelic journey, it has become quite clear that I need a mentor or three and that I need to do a lot of research, and then some more research just to get up to speed with you guys. Colin Fraser is one of my mentors and we are in regular contact. During one of our discussions, it became clear that I am from a younger generation and therefore my approach to philately is based on the current technology available to us. Colin kindly requested me to share my methodology.
It's all good.
Generations.
Reunion.
Can I just ask everybody to mute themselves?
Blosky, is that the name of it, honey?
What?
Where are we having the Navy reunion? Blosky?
Biloxi.
Biloxi. It's in it's west of New Orleans.
Colin, can you just mute everybody, please?
Yeah, excuse me. Could you please all mute yourselves? There's somebody having a whole discussion about Biloxi, I guess, Mississippi. If you could please mute yourself.
Thank you. The title of my talk is New Approaches to Postal History. Postal history, in short, is about looking at the evidence in front of us, putting it in context and to explain in detail the information that was gleaned from a cover. It has always required the collector to observe the smallest of details and to compare it with what we already know and to use our extensive knowledge to judge the information. The best known collections out there were put together by finding rare material which had limited information about them and were then curated using personal expertise that was obtained through years of study. But why are we focusing on postal history in particular? It is evident when you attend an international exhibition that the main focus is always on traditional philately and postal history, which is the foundation of philately. I want to state upfront that I am not here to change the way forward within postal history. I am here to highlight a few things, but mainly the fact that postal history hasn't changed, only the tools have. Traditional postal history collecting remains the gold standard for depth and authenticity. Newer methodologies and technology do not replace it. They extend our reach, improve precision, preserve fragile material, and sometimes reveal stories that were previously hidden or impractical to pursue. As a collective, we have to ask ourselves, what happens when information is no longer scarce, but time is? Just a short background of postal history for the non-collectors or newbies here with us tonight. Postal history is the study and collection of mail items as evidence of how a postal system operated rather than focusing on the stamps themselves. The simple definition is that postal history looks at how, why, when, and where mail was sent using real travel postal items such as letters, covers, postcards, and parcels, which means that postal historians examine things like routes, rates, and markings. Here are some examples which illustrates historical events. On the left, you will see a letter that was sent by a German prisoner of war that was being held at Fort Bragg. You will see the censorship clearly as well. In the middle is a first-day cover that depicts the currency change that happened in Great Britain in 1971, also known as decimalization. And on the right is a letter sent by a farmer during the occupation of Burma by Japan in 1944. These are all historical events that happened, and the items allow us a better understanding of the times, and in a way it almost transports you back to the event. 4 key areas of importance when it comes to postal history. The first element deals with documentation of geopolitical and political shifts. Postal items serve as physical witnesses to wars, political changes, and the rise and fall of nations. Because mail continues to move even during periods of upheaval, it provides a timeline of wartime realities, government transitions, and colonial histories. With wartime realities, we have envelopes from conflict zones that often bear censorship markings or military caches, documenting how governments have controlled information and managed military campaigns. When it comes to government transitions, we see that mail sent during a change in government or currency provides tangible evidence of shifting administrative power and economic restructuring. When we look at colonial history, the markings on letters help historians map the expansion and operation of postal systems during colonial periods, showing how distant territories were connected to central powers. The second element is the evidence of social and economic narratives, social philately, if you will. Modern approaches emphasize social philately, which integrates letters into the broader social and economic context of their time. This allows historians to track migration and human movement, human stories and urgency, as well as economic systems. The routes and destinations of letters often mirror mass migration patterns and the movement of populations across borders, as seen on the first pictures showing the Afrikaners migrating up north. By combining a physical cover with digitized archives like newspapers, researchers can uncover the human story behind a letter, such as an urgent reason for using express mail during a specific historical event. The picture in the middle is a canceller that was used by the Military Postal Express Service of the American Expeditionary Forces during World War I. The stamp with the hyperinflation on the right is an example where the postal rates and fees are not just administrative data. They reflect the economic health and regulatory environment of a country at a specific moment in time. The third element covers mapping technological and infrastructural progress. Postal history provides a unique lens through which to view the evolution of global infrastructure. It documents the evolution of transport, experimental frontiers, and maritime history. Covers show the progression of how mail moved, whether it was by horseback, ship, rail, or air, as per the mini sheet on the left. Early airmail covers often document experimental routes and the early stages of aviation technology before they became standardized. And through ship sailing lists and forwarding agent caches, postal history reconstructs the maritime trade routes that linked global economies. Last but not least is the real-world communication as evidence. Unlike official government proclamations, a traveled letter is an authentic artifact that was handled, marked, and moved through a system. It offers a tactile authenticity that connects the modern researchers to a specific moment in the 19th or 20th century, proving how postal systems and by extension societies operated, rather than just how they were intended to function. Social philately is considered an extension of postal history because it integrates traditional postal evidence with broader social and economic context to tell a richer human story, if you will.
Huh?
While traditional postal history
yeah.
focuses on the technical operation of postal systems such as rates, codes, and markings, social philately uses those same traveled postal items as evidence of human activity and real-world communication. Social philately serves as an extension in the following ways. Like traditional postal history, social philately maintains that the cover is still the primary source. It remains rooted in postal evidence, even as it expands the narrative to include the people and events behind the mail. It goes beyond technical focus. While traditional approaches may focus on a specific campaign or destination, social philately integrates the letter with a broader context, such as digitized diaries, photos, and ephemera databases. Traditional postal history studies the how, why, when, and where of mail, but social philately uses modern tools to provide deeper answers. For example, a researcher might use digitized newspaper archives to reveal a writer's urgent reason for using express mail, adding a human dimension to a technical rate study. It connects the physical witness of a cover to historical narratives such as migration, wartime censorship, or economic shifts. This approach demonstrates how postal items document real-world communication rather than just administrative data, thus documenting the human experience. In essence, if traditional postal history explains the mechanics of the journey, social philately uses those same artifacts to explain the social and historical significance of the message and the sender. This approach is part of the new way of collecting that utilizes digital archives to make feasible what was once prohibitive, allowing for a more comprehensive understanding of the soul of philately. The traditional way of postal history research is described as a foundational methodology that remains the gold standard for depth and authenticity. Its specific strengths are rooted in intellectual rigor, physical engagement with artifacts, and the development of specialized expertise. Firstly, there is intellectual rigor and trained judgment, which is credited for fostering a high level of scholarly discipline. Trained judgment is obtained through years of the physical handling of material. This process involves the core principles of observation, comparison, and judgment. Strong skepticism maintains high standards of evidence when analyzing postal items. Unlike the rapid pace of digital searches, the traditional approach relied on a more deliberate, slow, and careful thinking process. Secondly, there are tactile and physical strengths. A significant strength of the traditional method lies in the direct, physical connection between the researcher and the historical object. There is an irreplaceable value in holding an original artifact, such as an 1840s entire, and experiencing the nuance of the feel of the paper and ink when handled. The traditional approach honors the cover as the physical witness, the item that traveled, was marked, and survived. Many traditional breakthroughs occurred through the serendipity of discovery while searching through dealer bourses, auctions, flea markets, or personal networks. Thirdly, you get depth of expertise and context. Traditional research relied on deep personal immersion in the subject matter. Collectors built great collections based on immense personal expertise gained over time. Traditional study fostered a comprehensive understanding of postal systems, geopolitics, and social history, which afforded them deep contextual understanding. Expertise was built through mentors, personal correspondence, and deep engagement with physical journals. One person cannot be the absolute authority on matters. We need a knowledge network of fellow philatelists. Lastly, we look at superiority in presentation. Traditional methods remain superior for the highest level of competitive exhibiting. By focusing on the physical item, the traditional way ensures a level of authenticity and depth that modern digital-only approaches may struggle to replicate. The foundational tools required for traditional postal history encompass a combination of physical instruments, research materials, and intellectual frameworks. These tools allow the historian to analyze how, why, when, and where mail moved by focusing on the physical witness of the cover or letter. Let's look at the physical examination tools. They are tools that are used to authenticate and study the technical aspects of postal items collectors rely on. For example, for those close inspection of markings and stamps, we use magnifying glasses. To identify specific stamp issues on covers, we utilize perforation gauges and watermark detectors. Visual comparison is where you are hand matching items against known reference materials or other examples in a collection. The second set of tools cover the area of research and documentation materials. Traditional methodology is characterized by manual record keeping and deep dives into printed literature, specifically major works such as those by Robson Lowe or similar philatelic encyclopedias. There are many different ones around. Old official guides such as rate tables are used to manually reconstruct rate periods. Note cards and ledgers are used for building manual censuses and tracking findings by hand. Drawn maps are used to visualize and illustrate postal routes before the advent of digital mapping. Thirdly, let's look at how we access information and do networking. Because information was historically scarce, traditional tools often involved social and institutional access. Library visits and microfilm are necessary for reviewing old postal notices and official ordinances. Direct communication with other specialists was a primary way to transfer expertise. Those were usually done at your local society meeting. Organizations like the Royal Philatelic Society of London, for example, provide certificates and expert opinions. The last 2 points cover the aspects of networking, which is essential. Lastly, we look at intellectual frameworks. The most critical tools are not physical, but cognitive. The traditional way focuses on observation, comparison, and judgment. These 3 pillars are required to interpret evidence in context. Skepticism and high standards of evidence, which involve slow, careful thinking, is developed through years of handling physical material, which effectively is trained judgment. Manual calculation is where we determine the legitimacy of a cover by calculating rates and verifying routes using physical guides. While modern digital tools such as high-resolution scans and AI-assisted searches have extended the reach of the hobby, these traditional foundational tools remain the gold standard for establishing the depth and authenticity of postal history. While the tools available to researchers have evolved, the fundamental study of postal items remains rooted in a consistent set of core principles that prioritize evidence, context, and scholarship. However, there are a few principles that remain unchanged. Postal history continues to rely on observation, comparison, and judgment to interpret material. These intellectual frameworks are necessary to provide a defensible explanation of an item's history. Despite the rise of digital archives, the physical witness, being the cover that was handled and traveled through the postal system, remains the primary source for all research. Researchers must still verify that the postal rates are correct and that the proposed routes make sense within the historical context of the time. Even with modern rate calculators, the actual knowledge of these rates must still be derived from the covers themselves. Every claim made about a postal item must be backed by evidence and remain scholarly and defensible. While technology can assist in basic detective work, human expertise and trained judgment remain essential for the highest levels of competitive exhibiting and authentication. The central objective remains the study of how, why, when, and where a postal system operated by analyzing real travel items rather than focusing solely on the stamps. Ultimately, the sources emphasize that modern approaches do not replace these principles, but instead offer better tools to perform the same analytical tasks that postal historians have always done. The primary difference between postal history and traditional philately lies in the object of study and the intent of the collector. If we look at the object of study in traditional philately, their focus is on the technical production and the rarity of stamps, while postal historians treat these stamps as evidence of how a postal system operated. When we look at the intent and focus of the collector, we see that in traditional philately, the collector focuses primarily on stamps, specifically their design and printing. Collectors in this field often prioritize mint or unused stamps and value the condition and rarity of the individual adhesive. In postal history, the collector focuses on mailed items such as used covers. Despite these differences, both disciplines share a foundational reliance on observation, comparison, and judgment. In postal history, however, these principles are used to ensure that a cover's rates are correct, its routes make sense, and the explanations for its usage are defensible. While traditional philately might use tools like perforation gauges and watermark detectors to identify a stamp, a postal historian uses these tools alongside the rate tables and official postal guides to reconstruct the history of a traveled item. Said all of that and drawing some comparisons, I think it is important to take stock and see what has changed and what has remained the same before we continue. What I'm actually saying is this is to summarize how we can work faster, not harder. So the cover will still be the cover and your primary source. Rates and routes, as we know, cannot change. It was what it was at the time. Your explanations must be defensible, and our expertise that we've picked up over the years is still very, very valid, and it matters a lot. What has changed? It is just the speed of which we do things in terms of to access material via the internet. It's easier to compare bulk data, it's easier to cross-check, and it's faster to do so. And also the storage and preservation, we can do it en masse at very affordable prices. I am now going to show you a few slides where I am doing a direct comparison between the emerging tools and methods of the 21st century with the traditional tools we are all familiar with and still use today. Firstly, I want to address the differences regarding the acquisition and identification side of material. If you look at the traditional methodology, collectors typically acquired covers one by one through physical bourses, auctions, and society exchange booklets. Identification relied heavily on years of manual handling, physical reference books, and tools like magnifying glasses and perforation gauges. The pro for the traditional way is that it lends you the opportunity to see and touch the material up front as well as negotiate the pricing. There is nothing that replaces the human factor like the decades-long relationships that were forged between dealers and buyers over the years. The negative is that you have to wait a while for the next fair or event to be in your town or somewhere close in your vicinity, right? If you look at the modern digital tools, collectors now use global online platforms like eBay alongside digitized auctions and archives with high-resolution scans. Modern identification incorporates AI-assisted pattern recognition for cancels and digital databases for watermarks or plate flaws, which helps catch forgeries earlier in the process. The negative is that you run the risk of lost items through the mail or possibly being scammed. Many more, but I'm only mentioning a few. Let's look at the identification and authentication of material. Traditionally, collectors mainly used catalogs or specialized journals and books that were written by experts to identify and authenticate material. These books can be pricey and sometimes out of date or out of print. It is a slow process to curate and authenticate each individual item manually. You will find handwritten censuses which are sometimes incomplete and are often lost when a collector passes. With modern technology, we mainly use scanners and printers to obtain a high-resolution picture. These images can now simultaneously be sent to several experts for their guidance or opinions. Through image recognition, the item can now be matched across specialized auction or reference websites. This is also a way of persistence provenance tracking. With modern technology, the updating and maintenance of living censuses becomes much easier. An example, for instance, there could be an error on the Barefoot website, which can be discussed and corrected within a day. It is not so the case with a printed catalogue. Despite these technological shifts, the fundamental nature of the field remains unchanged. The physical cover is still the primary source, and rates and routes must still be defensible through evidence. While AI is excellent at pattern recognition and summarizing it, it is not an authority and it lacks understanding. traditional methods remain superior for the nuance of the paper and the ink feel and the development of a healthy skepticism. The ideal approach is now considered a hybrid, using digital tools for discovery and research while maintaining the traditional focus on the physical artifact. This isn't about replacing scholarship. It is about making sure it survives. Let's look at research and contextualization. Traditionally, you have a study where you work from, journal indexes, reliance on memory, and letters to other specialists. In modern times, we have digitized journals and catalogs, searchable auction archives, AI-assisted summarization, and image recognition for comparison. The traditional methodology research was a slow process involving library visits, microfilms, and personal correspondences with mentors or other specialists. Context was often limited to what could be found in printed journals or physical postal guides. With modern digital tools, researchers now utilize searchable databases such as digitized newspapers and ship sailing lists to discover obscure usages, just to name a few. AI-assisted summarization allows researchers to process large bodies of data in a short period of time. AI doesn't tell you the answer. It points you to several sources of information and it helps you ask better questions. What do I mean by this statement? It is like asking Google if there is a house for sale in London. You will get 1,000,000 houses for sale that you have to browse through. A better question would have been, is there a 3-bedroom house for sale in Islington under £10,000, for example? That would have resulted in the return of maybe 20 houses to look through. Rate and route reconstruction is, in my view, the most difficult part of postal history. Maybe because I did poorly at geography at school, but that's a whole nother story. Traditionally, postal rates were reconstructed by hand using note cards, ledgers, and manual calculations from old guides. Routes were often illustrated with hand-drawn maps. Today, historians use geographic information systems for postal route reconstructions like Google Earth historical overlays and spreadsheet-based rate calculators to visualize complex multi-carrier journeys. Digital data sets allow for statistical confirmation of rates across much larger samples than previously possible. I just want to reiterate that the knowledge still comes from the cover, not from databases. The survival of postal history is heavily dependent on our ability to preserve and share what we have learned or discovered. Traditionally, we shared our material by putting them in physical frames for exhibition purposes. Today, we share via Zoom and have virtual exhibitions such as Milcopex recently. Physical preservation involved albums and glassy mounts, which require handling the fragile material. We also travel to other societies to present our material at meetings. It involves a lot of handling, and with traveling, there is a chance of loss or damage in transit, especially so with international exhibitions. Whilst virtual exhibits allow material to be shared and studied globally without the risk of light or handling damage. If you look at social philately, the possibilities are endless in terms of complementary material available that could be relevant to your cover. If added to it, it will tell a great story other than just explaining the rates, route, and markings of the letter. For instance, if you look at the picture on the left, you will see a cover that is traditionally analyzed, and that is great. But imagine a page with the same letter on it, accompanied by a picture of the soldier in his uniform, or a picture of his squadron, or perhaps extracts from his diary describing the battle he fought in. In the same way, picture postcards can be used to showcase the growth of a town, or what the ship looked like the letter was sent from, and many more. Newspaper clippings add to the social element as well. The letter represents the facts of a moment in time, but the picture postcard or newspaper clippings brings the story to life. The transition from traditional to modern census building represents a move from manual personal records to persistent digital datasets that ensures the survival of philatelic scholarship. While the goal remains identifying and documenting surviving examples of specific postal items, the methodology has evolved significantly. Historically, census building was a labor-intensive manual process that relied on a collector's personal reach and memory. Researchers built censuses using handwritten notes, ledgers, and note cards. Because information was scarce and physical material was difficult to track across global markets, these censuses were often incomplete. Knowledge was frequently kept in private notebooks or unpublished collections. A significant weakness of this method was that their records were often lost when the collector passed away, leading to a loss of specialized expertise. Traditional censuses were often reconstructed from a limited number of physical examples encountered over years of handling material at dealer bourses and auctions. The modern approach utilizes digital tools to create more comprehensive living records that are accessible to the wider community. Unlike static paper records, modern censuses are updated over time and are designed for persistence, ensuring that scholarship survives their individual collector. Researchers now use scanned auction archives and image matching to track the provenance of items across decades of sales. Access to large digital data sets allows for the rapid identification of rare items and provides statistical confirmation of the rarity or frequency of specific rates and routes. Modern methodology employs high-resolution scanning and AI-assisted tools for pattern recognition, which helps in identifying specific cancels and establishing a clear provenance for high-value items. The modern approach does not replace traditional scholarship, but rather provides a bridge between generations. By using digital tools to handle the basic detective work of census building, researchers can spend more time on the high-level interpretation of physical witness on the cover. The comparison between traditional and modern research methodologies reveals the transition from a field defined by scarcity of information to one defined by scarcity of time. While traditional methods remain the gold standard of depth and authenticity, modern tools act as extensions that improve precision and discoverability. Let's look at the strengths of each methodology as outlined in the sources. Traditional research is rooted in a foundational methodology that emphasizes deep tactile engagement with physical artifacts. Trained judgment is years of physically handling material, covers, and original letters, fostering a strong skepticism and high standards for evidence. There is an irreplaceable value in the nuance of paper and ink feel and the tactile authenticity of holding a 19th century document, which cannot be fully replicated digitally. The traditional approach encourages a deliberate pace, relying on personal correspondence with specialists, mentors, and the study of physical journal indexes to build expertise. Many traditional breakthroughs occurred through the serendipitous discovery of items in dealer bourses, auctions, or personal networks. Modern approaches excel in scale, speed, and non-destructive study, transforming how data is accessed and cross-referenced. Digital archives such as searchable newspapers, ship sailing lists, and digitized office official ordinances allow for the discovery of obscure usages and faster cross-referencing of claims. High-resolution scanning and AI-assisted pattern recognition help identify cancels or plate flaws and catch sophisticated forgeries earlier than manual inspection alone might allow. Modern tools solve the big problem of aging expertise by capturing knowledge in living censuses and searchable datasets, ensuring that scholarship survives after a collector passes away. Through social philately, digital tools allow researchers to integrate letters with broader historical narratives such as migration or wartime censorship by linking covers to digitized diaries or ephemera. The most effective researchers utilize a hybrid approach, using modern tools for basic detective work to free up time for high-level interpretation. You need to be mindful of the fact that AI doesn't tell you the answer. It helps you ask better questions faster. While AI is excellent at summarizing and pattern recognition, it lacks understanding and is not an authority. Modern methodology allows for better visual storytelling of complex multi-carrier journeys through GIS mapping and digital overlays, which traditional hand-drawn maps could not easily achieve. Digitization reduces light and handling damage to fragile items, which allow younger scholars and global audiences to study the material remotely for generations to come. Ultimately, the core of postal history remains unchanged. It requires observation, comparison, and judgment. Modern tools do not disrupt the discipline. They simply provide better mechanisms for knowledge capture, continuity, and discoverability. So why does all of this matter, you may ask? If you look at the slide, these are all facts that I've just discussed in my previous slide. And I just want to add that postal history has always evolved quietly, carefully, and with respect for evidence. What we are doing now is no different. We are simply using better tools to do what postal historians have always done. The danger is not change. The danger is silence. And there's one important question that we have to ask ourselves. What knowledge do you hold that we cannot afford to lose? Okay, now we come to my favorite part. When it comes to modern technology and so forth, the first thing that is very useful is high resolution scanning. So on the right, I show a page from a catalog with the stamp. So you can either bend down for hours at your desk with your magnifying glass and look through the catalogs, or you can scan it in high resolution, and when you show it on screen, you can enlarge it, make it as big as you want to, and you can view small details. Fact is, you're sitting upright, you're not straining your eyes, and you're not straining your back and your neck. That's the first thing that I want to say about modern technology in terms of high resolution. The other thing that you can do to assist you with your authenticating and identifying material is you have a stamp in front of you. If you've got it scanned in, you can simply go to Google. You can put it into Google. I'm going to show you how you put a picture into Google. If you don't know, you click on the scan, the little camera icon, you upload your file. I have pre-uploaded my pictures that I'm going to use. And it will, within a few seconds, give you the answers. So it will tell you all the information you need to know that you can see there. And it will tell you where it's currently for sale as well. So you can get your own one, or you can get another one, or a variant if so required. The second one is a stamp that I don't know where it's from. I can't read the language. I only speak English and Afrikaans. So the next thing to do is when you go back to Google, again, you use the camera, you put in your picture, and with a few clicks, it will give you the answer. It offers a translate button there as well. If you do the translation and you click on show original, it will highlight the script that it identified, and it will put it for you in English. And once again, at the bottom, it would show similar or sometimes the same stamp for sale. If I go one step back again, it gave me all the information about the stamp that it had. Let me just bring it up again. So what I'm showing is just that it is simple and easy to do, and you don't have to wait for the next meeting or a friend or send it somewhere to be translated or something like that. It is at hand, quick and easy, and it will tell you what it is. It doesn't just apply to stamps. You can do the same with letters as well. I've got a letter here that I don't know what it is or where it's from, and I can't read anything here. It says it's a Burma Japanese occupation, farmer letter, and once again, I can click on translate. So it works with script and it works with printed, obviously better. So it depends on the handwriting of the sender. It may or may not get a lot of information. You can do it with documents as well. For those that are interested in documents, I've got a document here that you can look at as well. And once again, you click on translate and it will show you the original and what it has gleaned from the document. So that is what I wanted to show there. The other thing that's important, or what modern technology affords us to do, is that we don't have to have all the catalogs and all the reference books at hand. It becomes very pricey. Sometimes they're out of print, as mentioned before. So you can online, in many instances, get scanned catalogs. I've got Michelle catalog. I've got many other catalogs as well, but I've got it scanned in and I can view it once again, sitting up straight, not hunched over the catalog, and I can browse through the catalog if I want to. the benefit of this is catalogs are sometimes printed very small. I can obviously enlarge the size as well, which is something that is very nice. Okay, I'm hanging for some other reason. But you get the gist of that. We all know the Revenue Reverend. If you go to his website, once again, it is very easy to do research. I don't have to spend the money to go and buy the catalogs or the reference material. I've got it here, and you can do simple copy and paste or use the information to write up what you need to write up. There are also many versions of catalogs available. I only use material that is free. I don't pay for subscriptions. I don't pay for software. What came with my computer is what I use. I like to use Colnect, and the reason why I like to use Colnect is because you can look at stamps. If I look at a stamp from Adel, it gives you all the catalog numbers. Averton Teller, Stanley Gibbons, Scott, Michel. It gives you all the data on the left-hand side. This catalog is for free. I can click on the stamp. It will enlarge the stamp for me. I can make it bigger, can see all the detail that is required, and it gives me the watermark as well. Tells me there was a variant of some sort, and it should indicate what the variant was. At the bottom, it indicates what the variant was. So in short, this is just a few things that I wanted to show. I can show many things. I want to thank you for your time. I'm going to stop sharing, and you can ask questions. And if there was something you wanted to better clarity on, or ask something about the internet, how to work it all with the computers, feel free to ask. Thank you.
So thank you, Adele. As a technological Luddite, you showed me things that I was unaware of. If any of you have questions, if you want to unmute yourself and go ahead and ask the questions, Adele will be with us for as long as you have questions for. So Mike, you unmuted yourself. Does this mean you have a question?
I do have a question, Adele. Great presentation. That's a fascinating material that you went through. I'm just curious, have you used ChatGPT for any of your analysis? I
did indeed use that, yes, and added some of my own and took away from theirs and took away from mine. So correlated. It's a hybrid. Yeah.
Yeah, I've used that too, just as basically as a super search engine, and it's remarkable what it can do with a cover, or even with handwritten script that may be hard to read. It's able to transcribe it. But as you know, you hear a lot about AI hallucinating, and I had a couple of covers that it put out, and it just came up with stuff out of the blue. If it doesn't have the citation at the bottom, I would sort of say, okay, this is made up. And then I would ask it a question and actually correct it. It would say, oh yeah, that's right. That probably is not correct after all. So, but it is an amazing tool to use for research, particularly if you try to dig some information up that you can't readily find.
So just to comment on that with ChatGPT, there are many versions of AI. You get ChatGPT, you get Gemini, you get Grok, you get various lots. There's a Note NL that I use, and what I use it for when I was the editor is I get a lot of books that I need to do a book review on. Now, I cannot on a weekly basis read a reference book that's there on my shelf and do a book review on it. So if I've got the PDF version of it, I put it through the bulk data, and I can ask it to give me an extensive book review or a concise book review, and it will point out the strengths and what the intention was of the book and all of those things. So it helps a lot with different things, yes. The other thing that I need to mention with AI as well is that specifically in philately, there isn't a lot online. There are many books and written by experts and so forth that studied said field, whatever the field is that their area of interest was in. But those books are not available online, meaning that a lot of the, let's call it for the Rhodesia Study Circle, for instance, there's a lot of books that's not available online, so that information is not there. So if you happen to ask a question regarding that area, it will not give you the answer. or it will misinterpret certain things because it doesn't understand the differences in all the variants of the double heads, for instance. So that is just something, as I said, you must ask the question better. You must narrow your questions down to specifics, or else you're going to get hogwash. It's the same with Google. You put in there, give me a Michael Jackson song, and you're going to get 10 million versions, as well as cover versions of Michael Jackson songs. So you have to be specific and say, I want a song that Michael Jackson sang at said concert or whatever, if you want that. So you've got to guide it. Anybody else?
Someone has asked a question, Adele, whether
Yes.
adding research to a specific cover, whether you'd recommend adding research to a specific cover for potentially selling the cover in the future or donating it to a society. So essentially doing your own research on the cover before you would plan on selling it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Now, why would you do that?
Okay, so if you just have a cover and I walk by and I see it's a cover from India to Maldives, what's the significance? If you had said it was during said battle or whatever the importance is, or it came from John, who was very important in the war, he was a minister or something like that, or the biggest company in India, that makes a difference. Then I would pay $50 for it. But if not, I'm just going to walk on by because it's not my area of interest. So information is key here. If you do not educate your seller, you're not going to sell.
Right, right. Lee, you have a question for Adele.
I do. Well, question, comment. There's AI is a very interesting product. I've only experimented myself, but I was with on a Zoom call, which was recorded the other day by a sophisticated gentleman that was questioning AI with reference to three covers and the data that was being regurgitated by AI. And they used algorithms. There was a ticket to a rugby game in 1947, and they asked the score, and AI gave the score. And then he said, "How did you verify that, AI?" And then he was using Gemini in this particular case, and it was an algorithm. I said, "Well, that was the best team in the league in that year," and then we just guessed at the score. Like, it didn't go to the Brantford Examiner expositor, sorry, the Brantford newspaper in 1946. It just it just dreamed up an answer, and it was incorrect. And then they asked about rates, and it was incorrect again. And they got four scenarios, and then the Gemini started profusely apologizing, and it was a very humorous Zoom meeting, but always get it verified if you're trying to get data from AI. It's a useful tool to assist you to head into a direction, I think, but it was remarkable. And then, of course, that puts the question in: are people today using AI to self-diagnose their health and so on and so forth? I don't even want to go down that area, but be very careful in trying to get information, and then AI says this, and you put it into your exhibit, and it's wrong. And then he went back 2 days later, asked the same question. Gemini didn't learn anything and made the same mistakes. It's pretty scary stuff at this point.
If I could comment on that, as to the reason why. Facebook and a lot of things on the internet has been around long before AI. And when you're on Facebook and on Google, you can put anything on there that you please. I can put on there that I'm a flower. 100 years from now, somebody's going to Google Adele or ChatGPT Adele, and it's going to come up, I'm a flower. And it is because it was put out there. So it doesn't know what is right and what is wrong. It will usually mention the sources as well, specifically if it was from written material, that it will do that. If it was just a post that it was referencing, it would not do that. But specifically, written material will be referenced.
Well, we've all run into situations where books were written back in the 20s or 30s and experts at that time. And then the information was carried on as being correct when it's really not correct. And so, so it's no better, no worse than that, only it's quick.
Correct.
And
Correct.
I would encourage anyone who's writing an exhibit and using AI to assist them to verify the information, check the information with the source, the postal guide or whatever you're using to do rates or facts on scoring the football, rugby game or whatever. Anyway, thank you.
Yes.
Great and very technical Zoom call today. Very fascinating. And I'll have to go back and relook at certain areas because there was a lot of information on that. So thank you again, Adel. Beautiful.
Pleasure. Thank you. Anybody else?
Adel, if I can just ask you one other question, Mike Wilson here. In terms of the future of philately, of stamp collecting, do you see postal history in the way you've described it, which includes sort of the social dimension, social research? Do you see that potentially attracting more people to the hobby than, say, the traditional philatelic arm?
Absolutely, I do. I'll tell you why. I attend a lot of internationals and nationals as well. And because I'm usually not actively involved in it, I'm an observer. And you can see that people that are not philatelists, when they happen to walk through on the traditional side and the revenue side, they will walk through very quickly because it's on the traditional side, it's the same stamp, 2 million versions of it with the varieties, right? Postal history, because there's nothing else that's interesting, it's a lot of reading and they walk through very quickly. It's only the philatelists that take a slow walk through it. And if you incorporate the interesting or the story alongside the history, it makes it better. I definitely believe, and for the younger people as well, the rules and regulations regarding exhibiting has changed. It's come a long way in the last decade. You can do postcards now and all those types of things, which is great. And there still needs to be more change to get the youngsters. My issue that I have is you sometimes see youngsters, but they only stay for a short period of time. Then they go to varsity and all those things. And for the next 20 years, you don't see them. So wherever I go, it's usually myself. I'm 50 years old. And then the next step up is 70 plus, wherever I go. So where are the 60-year-olds? Where are the early 70-year-olds? I don't see them. There's a big, big gap. And then if I look below me, it's the same thing. I don't see 40 or 30-year-olds. I don't see them at the auctions. I don't see them at the bourses. I don't see them. So you occasionally see, but they're dealers. They're not collectors. And that is quite scary. So we need to change if we want them to be active. It's like you don't see pocket watches anymore. When the first wristwatch came about, the companies that got on board and made wristwatches, they survived today. The ones that kept to, we only doing pocket watches because we've been doing it for 200 years, they're gone. So we definitely need to change. I'm not saying everything needs to be digital. As I explained, you can't do everything digital because you do need the tactile, you need the cover. We cannot change the rates, but we need to present it in a different way and we need to engage in a different way.
So Adel, let me ask you a difficult question. You're suggesting that our exhibitions and shows where we have material up in the frames, we should be doing our exhibits differently. What would you have the exhibitors do? What would you have the judges do? How would you change what the judges want to see?
Okay, change is very slow at the end of the day. So to change the rules in terms of postal history, how we judge it and what you can and cannot show, that's not going to change very quickly. Instant change that can happen is if you've got an experienced person that takes people through the exhibitions. I'll tell you why, because people that walk into an event and they've got 240 frames to walk through, they don't have a clue what is the revenue, what is this, what is that. They just blindly walk through. After 10 minutes, they walk out again. They might see interesting thing here, an interesting thing there. There's nobody that can usually ask a question or two. So it's a quick visit, they're in and they're out. If you had a guide, tour guide per se, that take people through, it would be much, much better. that would make a big change whilst we are changing FIP and FIPA and FIAP, while they are changing rules to allow certain things into the postal history category, into the revenue category, add a bit of social philately or something else, context philately as well. So that would be better.
Well, it's interesting that you say that, because when they had the last international exhibition in Jerusalem, gosh, before COVID, they actually had what I would call tour guides actually walking people around the show. And it was very, very successful. And one of the best people doing it was actually somebody who does walk tours around Jerusalem itself. And he was able to take people around the frames and talk about what was being shown. And it was a very successful endeavor. And I know Ken Martin, I don't know if Ken is still on the call. Ken, I know, has done that for a number of the APS summer shows. And I don't know what Ken's experience has been actually doing it, but I'm sure it's been beneficial.
One other thing, I see Rick asked a question about my presentation. Those that are interested, you can have my full PowerPoint presentation. Just send Colin an email and I'll mail it through to you. Colin, I'll mail you the updated one. Okay. I just want to say, talking about exhibitions, the biggest problem that we face with exhibitions is that we hold it in a big hall that's got no relevance to anything. It's a big convention hall, or it's a big school hall, or something like that, because of costs and because it's central and those types of things. The only people that go there are the people that want to be there. It's like handing out Bibles at the church. They're already converted. You must have your exhibitions at places of interest. We had a very successful one late last year at the Voortrekker Monument, because people go to the Voortrekker Monument because it's already an area of interest that they want to go to, but none of them are philatelists. So they were all forced to look at the to look at the exhibition. That way you get more people, because having it in like Birmingham, there was no relevance to the hall. There was no reason for people to go to the hall at Birmingham, other than a philatelist that wanted to go there and see his material or his friend's material. So that is one thing that needs to change as well. It would bring more people. Dick, you had a question.
Yeah, excuse me. Piggybacking on what you were said, I had an incident happened last week at a stamp club meeting. One of our members who's recently gotten interested in basically filling spaces in his collection, which that's okay. He said, I'm going to go to Boston 2026. What should I do? I didn't know what to tell him. He the exhibits that they put up are highly specialized. They're international quality. I don't think he would get anything out of it. And he only collects US and UN. So his time at the Bourse is he's only going to be available expensive stamps. I think it would be a waste for him, but he wants to go, so he's going to go. I think that he'd be much better off at a national show or a regional show where he can sit down and just hobnob with the dealers and the other people around. That doesn't happen at an international.
Very true, yeah. I like going to them. I started going to the internationals as a newbie because I was just interested in stamps, and the more I learn and the more I see, the better. So it didn't bother me that I didn't know anything at the time when I went. I just looked at the pretty pictures, if you want to call it that, and I learned from there. So, it can be a great experience depending on your mindset. Anybody else with a comment or a question? Okay. Well, you saw Kat said there will be informal meetings and presentations as well at Boston. Thanks, Gary.
There have been a number of very complimentary comments about your presentation too, Adel. I know you're too embarrassed to mention those, but I will mention them for you. That a number of people have commented that they've learned a lot and that they've really appreciated what you've discussed tonight. And I think a lot of us are still trying to feel our way into this technology, and the benefits are going to continue to accrue to us all, but it's a learning curve, and for some of us a very steep one.
It is. It is.
And so, Marianne, do you want to say anything before we close the meeting, apart from that our next presentation is going to be on the 9th of February? Sorry, I'm just leaning over to get my notes. The 9th of February, when Andrew Kelly from Colorado, and who's going to be one of the judges at the show, is going to speak about a survey of the Washington Franklin postal history. So a change of pace, a change of direction, and it will be very nice to hear from one of the judges at the show. And one of the things that some of you attending who might be considering exhibiting at the show, it would obviously also be an opportunity for you to ask Andrew questions or to make suggestions about your exhibit that he will be judging back in September. So if there are any more questions or comments, well, actually, Adele, you got another compliment. Excellent presentation and discussion. Thank you. So, Adele, thank you very much indeed for taking the time out in the middle of the night. And I think we all appreciate the wisdom and information that you've shared with us all.
And on behalf of the Milcopex committee, thank you very much. We appreciate the time, and I can't imagine you being up at 3 o'clock in the morning giving this presentation. Well done.
Thank you, guys.